When automated facial recognition systems deployed in public spaces ingest real-time biometric data, how can public administrators reconcile continuous mass surveillance with the strict statutory requirements of data minimization and purpose limitation? Welcome to Wandt Courseware, an AI-narrated video series unpacking the latest lectures of Professor Adam Scott Wandt of the John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York City. Integrating artificial intelligence into government operations forces a structural redesign of modern data protection law. In this session, we examine how the mechanics of massive biometric databases collide with strict regulatory frameworks. We will map the statutory standard established by the European Union's GDPR, assess the societal cost of mass surveillance, and navigate the fragmented compliance landscape here in the United States. Public administrators can no longer rely on reactive, after-the-fact policies. They must architect legal constraints directly into the code of their AI systems. Legal scholar M. DeWitt identifies a severe friction point. The core technical requirements of artificial intelligence directly oppose legacy data protection laws. Machine learning vacuums up massive datasets for automated classification. This aggressive intake violates the principle of purpose limitation, which dictates data be used only for its original narrow reason. Furthermore, continuous tracking collides with the rule of data minimization. For both public agencies and private contractors, deploying facial recognition technology creates an immediate, massive compliance liability. To navigate this, administrators must deploy a mandatory operational tool, the Data Protection Impact Assessment, or DPIA, to identify these risks before launch. Engineers and managers must adopt privacy by design, embedding technical safeguards into the system architecture from day one to protect citizen data rights. Because AI naturally strains against these protections, rigorous privacy audits are the only way to legally justify any deployment of biometric technology. To see how these concepts are codified, we look to the European Union, which established the strictest global baseline for algorithmic regulation. GDPR Article 22 establishes the right not to be subject to decisions based solely on automated processing. The law provides narrow exceptions: explicit informed consent from the subject, or contract necessity, meaning the algorithmic decision is required for a contract. When developers operate under these exceptions, the statute forces them to build mandatory safeguards into their deployment pipelines. Citizens are guaranteed specific rights of algorithmic explanation: the right to demand human intervention, to express their viewpoint, and to legally contest the machine's decision. Article 22 operates as a statutory blueprint for human-in-the-loop requirements, elevating algorithmic redress from an administrative courtesy to a legally enforceable civil right. These statutory constraints are tested most severely when we examine the societal impact of facial recognition technology. Researcher L. Dudkowitz points out that biometric tracking is not a simple incremental upgrade for law enforcement. It alters the structure of public space. When unlocking a smartphone, you use a one-to-one verification system. A specific scan matches a single template. Public facial recognition operates differently, continuously scanning crowds against massive databases in real time. This persistent tracking exerts a chilling effect, altering behavior and suppressing participation. Public sector managers face severe ethical consequences if they deploy these tools without constraint. Because widespread mass surveillance erodes institutional trust over the long term, agencies must institute independent audits and mandate public participation in all biometric policy decisions. The urgency of this oversight is especially clear when we turn to domestic AI privacy standards here in the United States. Unlike Europe's centralized, proactive model, the U.S. operates on a highly reactive and fragmented legal framework. At the federal level, the Federal Trade Commission relies on its authority to enforce consumer protection guidelines. The FTC targets unfair or deceptive practices. Recently, they have focused enforcement actions against companies that gather biometric training data without explicit user authorization. Beyond the FTC, state legislatures are actively drafting a complex patchwork of independent data privacy statutes. Statutes like the California Consumer Privacy Act and the CPRA explicitly define sensitive biometric identifiers and regulate their commercial use.
Crucially, these emerging state laws grant consumers specific legal rights to opt out of automated profiling and algorithmic decision-making. Without a unified federal privacy law, public administrators must constantly audit their procurement and data sharing agreements to comply with a tangled web of jurisdictional rules. The operational directive is clear. Any agency deploying artificial intelligence must build a rigorous internal data governance framework before flipping the switch. Administrators have to synthesize international baseline standards with strict domestic compliance realities. Every biometric system must be continuously evaluated against strict thresholds of operational necessity and proportionality.
Furthermore, the architecture must support clear, transparent workflows for algorithmic redress and mandatory human oversight. Just because an agency has the technical capacity to deploy mass surveillance does not mean it supersedes the public's expectation of civil liberty. Like, follow, and subscribe for more deep dives into emerging technology, digital investigations, and the ideas shaping our future. And remember, stay curious and want knowledge.